Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk Food Safety with Tia and Jill.
Hello, everyone. Great to see you out there.
Yes, yes, see you out there. So, in order for us to actually be able to see you, put in the comments, hello, wave, put an emoji, something, so we'll know that you are out there listening to us.
Yeah, I like the emoji because I love to find out like what's somebody's like favorite emoji or which one do you use the most?
Ooh,
Like drop that in. That would be fun to see
that's
today.
a good one. I wish I could add mine. Or like it's even like what is the emoji you're using most often right now, which is probably like for me the one that's like because it's like I have all these things, and I was telling Jill earlier that I'm taking my daughter to our doctor today, and it's an impromptu visit, right? So it's like, oh, how can I shift my calendar? So that will be my emoji today.
Yeah, and mine will probably just be snow.
Oh yeah, you
Right? We
guys
have
are
the
scary.
2 days, 2 snow days up here in Minnesota because we're expecting like between 10 and 20 inches of snow.
Ooh,
But
that's
right now you would know the sun is out and it's beautiful and it's blinding because
oh,
it's
I bet.
you know
I bet.
reflecting off the snow, but we'll take it. We don't mind.
It's always funny, like when you guys get a whole bunch of snow, and like right now in Baltimore, it's raining, it's pouring rain. So I'm like,
Oh,
if we had colder temperatures, right, like we would be getting a bunch of snow right now.
hopefully
But that's just not how it's going to work in Baltimore.
not right now. So,
Not right now. Not right now. Hopefully not into the future. You know,
right.
because then Tiana will be at home with me,
It's all good.
which I do love those snuggles.
Yes.
So we want to know, say hello. How's the weather out where you are? And are you ready to talk about people readiness?
Yes. Yes. Right. We're talking about people rights. I'm going to put our banner up for us
Yes.
because how often do we have the whole like hurry up and wait
Mm, hmm
or
hmm
ready, set, wait?
mm, hmm hmm
Like we have those happen to us all the time in work, don't we? Or just in life, but we're
Yeah,
talking specifically about work.
yeah, yeah. I know people readiness in my life, right? Like it applies.
The concepts all apply, exactly.
Right, right. I mean, you're right. Where organizations like we really get to the point where it's like we want to change, like maybe we roll out new systems or new processes. I mean, how many new SOPs can someone write? Like we're in food safety and quality. We know is someone's asking us, where's the document for this, right? Or we need a
Mhm.
document for this, or an inspector saying, where's the document? So we're always writing these processes. We're always changing something, and that's great. But if we don't understand people readiness for that change, we get to the point that we're hurry up, wait, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, especially here at the beginning of the year, because so many projects and so many initiatives seem to line up with the beginning of the year. So there's some of that initial planning and then like the start. And this is where I think we sometimes have that feel of like, hurry up, wait.
Yes, yes.
Right. And that's why today we know that people readiness is just one element of like this overarching
Mhm.
organizational readiness that we'll talk a little bit more about. But yet, people are the drivers of all the other parts, which is why we're talking about the people aspect today.
And I would say it's one of the most important parts of it because
Culture.
because you said it touched every piece of it, but we actually spend less time in that area.
Yeah. Well, and right now in food safety, everything is food safety culture, and we have to be talking about people for food safety culture,
Yeah.
and a big part of that is people readiness, not
hmm
just right. We're always thinking, how do we make things for other people to do, but like we have to be ready. Like we're the
Yes.
leaders that are the owners and the drivers of food safety cultures. Like, are we ready? Are we getting people around us ready? How do we
hmm
know if they're ready? How do we know if the people above that are supporting us are actually ready?
hmm
So there's a whole lot of different aspects we have to consider when we are trying to move things forward.
Yes, yes. It's one of the reasons why we use coaching based principles is because that first look at, am I ready for this change? Am I ready to lead this change? Do I have that mindset, right? Am I in that mindset? It's so important for you to do that work first and then start moving to your team.
Mhm.
I'm ready to lead. Is my team ready to lead? Do they have the right tools? Are individually, right? Or do they have are they empowered, right, to make these decisions and to make the changes? And then starting to move from that is one of the reasons why Catalyst is built on coaching principles.
Yeah. And, when we think about how much time, energy, resources that organizations spend on change, especially because, how many sets of values are like innovation and change and
Mhm.
improvement? Like, that's all awesome. But if we spent even a portion of the time that or the energy that we spend in those areas on actual people readiness and being ready for change, we probably would see a lot higher percentage of positive outcomes when it comes to some of these projects, initiatives, improvement plans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Even the best laid strategy, best laid plan, right? If your people are not ready for it and you haven't done the work on people readiness, it's probably not going to be successful.
Probably not. So as we get going, I want to do a shout out. Hello, Nikita, joining us from New York. Woo, good to
Yeah.
see you.
It sounds
And
like you guys are having some weather like us down here,
it
because it
does.
is a great day for a nap.
Great day for a nap. And so, Nikita, we know you're familiar with what we do, and we love having you here with us. But for people who are maybe new or are not sure, like who is this Jill and Tia and Catalyst, and what do they do? We empower technical experts to become technical leaders. And as we just talked about, like we know that as technical experts, we have to be the ones be a champion, and we have to advocate for the food safety culture that we want to see. So whether that's the systems that we know are important, whether it's the processes that help us be successful, whether it's developing people, whether it's getting resources, all of that starts with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you know what? We get it because we've been there. We know that like when we went through our, education and experience, it was all about the technical side of things, not necessarily the soft skills, the leadership skills, the strategic, how do I think ahead? How do I have self-awareness?
Right.
That's what we do. Because the only way for us to all collectively get better is to make sure that we are continually developing those skills for ourselves, for our teams. And so that's why we partner with organizations. So that way, like we are the leadership and development partner. So we help carry that load.
There you go. That's who we are.
That
And
was a lot.
but you know what? When you're talking about people, right? Like there's a lot of aspects to that.
Mhm.
And we've been there, like you said, we've been there. We've worked in small, big, medium size, lots of money, no money situations, right? And if you're not focusing on the well-being of your people and developing your people, then nothing is getting done.
No, you're not going to move forward,
You're not.
which
You're not.
is a perfect lead in to why we're doing people readiness, because this is like our capacity to move forward.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And when you think about that, and when you know, gauge people's capacity to move forward, you think about those technical skills, you think about those human skills, right, which we talk about all the time, and the willingness to move
Hmm.
forward.
Yes. Yeah, and so I'll even use me as an example because, right, I have all the technical skills in the world to write HACCP plans. I can do
Mm-hmm.
them. I have done them. I still do them.
Mm-hmm.
My willingness to do them, like on the scale, is usually on the lower end.
Mm.
Like I don't love doing them, but I
Yes,
have the skill to do them.
yes,
This is why we explore these areas because even if I have all the skill in the world or someone on my team does, if they're not willing to pick the ball up and go forward, like
yeah.
we need to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because I'm starting the audiobook, Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. I haven't read it
Oh,
yet. And so I've read things about it, of course, right? Like this is a big, let me know if you read it or listened to it on audio book because many, many people have, of course, it's Brene Brown. But I haven't yet. And so I just started it, which I didn't tell you, Jill, that I started it. I know you're like,
I
oh
know.
my
I'm like, I know I have that book here somewhere. Like, which
God.
pile is it on? So I can pull that out and read along with you.
Yes, yes. But one of the things I'm just in like the beginning. She just finished the introduction part, but one of the piece of it is she talks about courageous leadership, And she's going through, just an overview of her research, what she's done. And she was saying that some people are like, you're born with this courageous leadership, or you have these certain skills and that makes you courageous. But there's this one piece in there, and she didn't use this word, but this is exactly what she's talking about, is the willingness to be a courageous leader, a willingness to have the difficult conversations, right? To stand in front of the pack, to be a part of that change. Like when we think about food safety culture, some of us are coming from a culture that needs a lot of help, right? And a lot, like you have to turn this ship around, but you have to do it. You have to be courageous to do that. And you have to be willing to be that leader, right? And I think some people miss that piece of willingness.
Well, and I think organizations miss it as well because they don't understand necessarily that that's a really important component. Like they get it when we see we don't have it, but they don't necessarily always know how to look for it, perhaps when they're hiring or
Mm-hmm.
how to make sure that they're actually like inspiring people to have that willingness.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It takes it takes the leader that's doing the inspiring, right? Like they have to have those technical skills, those human skills, and that willingness to be that leader for someone else. And so
Mhm.
that's why it starts with you, right? Like, because you, the people that's listening to us, the people that's thinking about their food safety culture, and if their people are ready for the change. Like it really does start with you, whether you are the one that owns the budget or not. You have to show that you are willing to be that courageous leader. And then you have to be willing to go and inspire other people to do it.
Yeah. And I think this is a great place for us to even talk about self-awareness because
Mm-hmm.
as a leader, right, there are things that are easier for us to see. For example, like gosh, if I haven't taken um I don't know, let's say FSVP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's easy for me to see that hole, that gap in my technical training. It's not always as easy to see in our leadership skills or in our willingness where we
Mm-hmm.
have those gaps
Yeah.
unless we're willing to spend some time to actually like sit in that space and go, how willing am I?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
how
And
how well can I actually influence people? How
mm-hmm.
comfortable am I making decisions?
Yeah. Yeah. And what do I do in situations that I feel the pressure,
Mhm.
right? Or there's conflict, or, do I confront it head on? Am I passive aggressive? Am I, what do I do? What do I do in this situation?
Yeah.
And I think one thing that Brene Brown kind of talks about in this introduction too is that everyone is scared, right? Everyone, even leaders that are courageous, that stand in front of thousands of people, or stand in front of a small group of people and tell people, hey, it's time for us to change. Like everyone feels that fear, right?
Yeah.
Of like, man, I'm doing something new, I'm doing something different. We felt it, right? That little hesitation. It's just that the leaders that are successful at it, they push through that.
Yeah. Then we're going to be obviously we're stuck, right? We're
Hmm.
going to be stuck where we are. But when we can actually look at that and say, gosh, what would it take for us to get past that? Or what's in the way that's creating that fear? So then like, do I need to spend more time or resources on training?
Hmm.
Do I need to spend some time on coaching? Do
Right.
I need to get some extra support? Like, what are the parts that I need to be ready in those other areas?
Yes, yes, yes. I think one piece, and this is a good time for us to mention it. You had mentioned it earlier that people readiness is a part of this organizational
Mhm.
change management, and so we're going to talk a lot about people readiness today. But do want to call out that there's other things, right, that the organization should be doing in order for you to make a change, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's small or big. And some of those things are your systems, right? Like what systems are you using? Do you have the right procedures in place? Do you have technology, right? Do you have upgraded technology? What barriers do you have? There was an example I was walking through with someone where the organization is ready to do this technology change, and they think it's going to solve all their issues around their process.
Mhm.
But if your process is failing, even if it's manual, if your process is failing, technology might be able to mask that for a little longer, but the process is still going to fail because
Yep.
you don't have a clear process that technology is really helping enable for you.
Yeah.
So that's like a piece of it, right? That's one of the pillars to making sure that your systems and processes are in place.
Yeah. And, I think whether we're talking about food safety culture or a system like that. So, right, traceability is a big thing right now, or, sesame with the allergen.
Mm,
Well, let's talk about even traceability. Like we may say, gosh, all we need to do is upgrade our software to have this happen or update the process for this. Well, if people aren't ready for that, this software will never be successful.
hmm
And so that's why these things all work together to have the success up here that we need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
So
we would
everything
love.
has to come along.
Right, right. Yeah, we would love. Let us know in the comments, like how many people purchased uh, some technology, right, and you don't use it to the full capacity.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that happens because people aren't ready, right, or the organization doesn't spend time getting your people ready.
Yes. We hear a number of stories, and I've experienced it myself, right? Like, yes, we want to implement this software and we put it in the one plant to trial it, and it never goes anywhere else.
Right. It's true, and it doesn't mean that it's bad technology or it's a bad process or
No.
the owners, whoever owns it, right? That supply chain should have owned it instead of operations or instead of quality. Like that might not have been the issue. The issue might
Mhm.
have been people readiness.
Right. And the same thing applies for food safety culture,
Mhm.
right? Like we're like, gosh, yep, we're ready to jump in and take some surveys or quizzes. We want to collect some data. But are people ready then to act on that data? Are they ready to put together, like, how do we draw other people into the conversation? How
Mm-hmm.
do we move these things forward? Like, there's a whole lot that needs to happen, even when we talk about even people readiness with culture and how it all needs to be aligned.
Right, exactly. You
Which is
know,
why, oh, I was going to say, why I find it fascinating that this concept of people readiness doesn't apply. It's not just a food thing, right? Or
no.
organizations. Like it, people in communities use it for as they're thinking about how does our community change. I was telling Tia earlier when I did a little bit of just random searching, like the Armed Forces has a whole pile of stuff out there about their readiness plans and how they're
Mm-hmm.
doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
not a new concept, but
No,
once again, it's are we utilizing this wonderful tool and set of philosophies to
yeah.
prepare our people?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it too on here, like safety culture, people culture. Um, I love the example of the army. Like, how can we use these examples that are out there and really, it's like best practice sharing, right? Like, how do we take the best practices and incorporate that into what we want to see in food safety culture? We do it all the time on the show. We do it at Catalyst, right? Like, as you think about your own culture, like take these best practices, right? Take the best practices of people readiness. If anything, our military needs to be ready, right?
Mhm.
Our military needs to be willing, right? And so it's one of the reasons why they invest in that readiness plan. And so
It
as we
is.
think about for our organizations, we need our people to be willing and ready
Yes,
and
very
equipped.
much so. And, and I think if somebody's curious, so we're going to go into this a little bit, but one thing to maybe check out is last year we did a webinar with about building bench strength in your team.
Mhm.
And that was all about like kind of these early stages of like getting like assessing where our team is at.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when we talk about people readiness, we always have to know, like, well, where are we today? What are we
hmm
ready for today?
hmm
And then we have to think about, like, well, what do we need to be ready for?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
We talk a little bit about like where does culture and strategy kind of play, right? And that's you're talking about that
Yeah.
piece right there on understanding where you are and where you want to go. You have to know like what is that vision? Where are you
Mhm.
trying to get to? And making sure that people, like you said, people are ready to go down that path.
Yeah. So if you catch that replay, you'll see some of the tools that that we even kind of gave as examples of ways to help you to actually put this into a format so that you have, you know, usable data and information to be able to assess people readiness. And
Yes.
there's multiple ways, but it's a good start.
Yeah. Yeah. We gave some tools. So let's talk even deeper, right? Like we've talked about people readiness. How does it fit into the overall organizational change management? Why is it so important to evaluate people readiness?
Well, I think the big one is, right, we always hear, I don't have enough time and we don't have enough money. All right. So
Yeah.
when we work from this place of we have some limited resources,
Hmm.
like for us to evaluate where to spend those things and where we need to fill these gaps, well, we can conserve these valuable resources just by knowing exactly what we need to get us to the next place versus kind of like schmattering of things.
Right, exactly. How many of us kind of think about like, oh, we're doing this again. I've already spent time on it, but someone's asking me, right? Like someone up high is asking us to do this, even though we've already done it before, right? Or we already know the answers to it, or we know our people aren't ready to do this, so it's just going to sit here. You know,
Mhm.
knowing that information and really spending the time and money in the areas that make sense is key.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, because then it helps you look at it to say, do I have it? Do I have some of these skills internally? Do I need to have them externally? Is this
Hmm.
short term I need them? Do I need them long term on my team?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways you can look at that to know what's the best way for me to invest and use these resources.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and one that automatically gets you a win, right? Like
Mhm.
when you think about like, oh, we don't have that many resources. How do we really target what people are doing? That is a big win.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially when we know that if we're operating from this place of we don't have enough time or money, that for us to be able to become the expert in another thing, sometimes that's not even practical.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we need to do is have someone help us get the parts that we need so then we can help maintain and move things forward.
Yeah, yeah. It's a part of understanding your resources that you have, right? Do I need that help internally? Right?
Mhm.
Like, do we need to build this internally, or is that something externally we can bring on to support? I mean, I'm even thinking about like, if it's something where, let's take an example, you brought up FSVP, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're not ready as an organization to build out this full FSVP team. It's just not the where you're going. Maybe eventually you're not going to have any foreign suppliers. So you don't want to build out that team right now.
Mhm.
That might be a great time to say, how do I get some external resources to help fill that need
Yes.
so
Yes.
that my people can work on the things that are pushing our food safety culture forward?
Yeah. Yep. We had one, I mean, years ago, just even things like, are we a food company or are we a lab company? And don't get me wrong, I
Mm,
love lab testing, but there are breakpoints in when it makes sense to have those internally versus externally or what parts you
yes,
do.
yes.
And what we were finding is, gosh, we're investing a lot into that, which is important and necessary. But do we
Mhm.
need to do that here or do we partner with someone who does it really well so we can focus on our business of
Right.
making food really well?
Right, exactly, exactly. And there comes a time where you have to think about that, right? Like you have to
Mhm.
think about that and you have to start prioritizing. And I would say, like, I was terrible at like really understanding how to use external resources.
Oh,
I didn't earlier on in my career, like I was trying to juggle everything internally. And really it took some time being in the startup world because they need external resources in order to push their businesses forward because they literally don't have any resources internally. And so
yeah.
that really helped me understand, wow, there's so much that I don't really need to spend the time internally working on when I can get someone externally to help me.
I think that's a really good point because especially as technical experts, like we love learning new things and like, yes, we're going to take that on and we feel a great ownership to making sure it's done right, which is really cool. But yet all because we can do it doesn't mean we have to be the ones actually doing it.
Mm, hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's important because as we think about this whole people readiness and like making sure we have enough time and space to do things, like part of why we do this is we want to know which strategies are more likely to have positive outcomes because
Mm,
we're either better aligned today or perhaps they match with the resources that we are looking to implement so that we have better success. But
yes.
that's one of the whole reasons we do this people readiness is because we want to have better success.
Yeah. And we want to like, really work on the things, right, that are going to give that positive output.
Mhm.
Like we've been in a situation where we have a vision, right? We have a vision and there's like 100 things we want to do. But when you really understand where your people are and what they can take on and what they're willing, right,
Yeah.
that willingness to do, then you can say, okay, I know Tia is super excited about this, and this could be on our priority list. Let's give that to Tia. Jill
Mhm.
needs this opportunity to build and to learn these specific skills, and it's a need for the organization. Let's have her lead this project. So, understanding that readiness will be able to help you identify what you should even tackle next.
Yeah, and it aligns with that business case. We
Hmm.
always talk about how do we as food safety quality leaders better integrate into the business.
Yes.
Here's a great way, right? When we have a business strategy that says we need to go here, all right, how do we make sure our team is aligned to be able to help move in that direction?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, Nikita, I love your comment on like otherwise they'll innovate a new practice. It's true, like right, if people are not ready to move forward and the organization is trying to push them there, then people are just going to innovate a new way of doing things. And then
Yeah.
you'll come back and you look and say, oh, wait, you're not using this process. We rolled it out. And then people are like, well, that didn't really work for me, right? Like this works better for me.
Yes. And I think that's really important because we do want to harness that innovation,
Mhm.
but we want to harness it so that people are part of this readiness assessment and then they are part of the solution.
Yes, yes,
This is
absolutely.
a huge reason why we want to do people readiness.
Because when people are a part of that solution, right, they have done their innovation, right? They have been a part of that innovation process to say, what do we need? What's our barrier? How do we make sure that you're willing and we're willing to move forward? What will take you? What will get you on board, right? What will it take for you to be inspired and become an ambassador for this program? Right? Like those are all the pieces we need to understand so that they can become that ambassador and be a part of the solution and shout it from the rooftops when you're rolling out, right? New process, new systems, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and it really helps them just be part. So like when we talk about like, gosh, I mean, we can use the FSVP as an example. Like, hey, who has this type of experience? Someone may be like, I do. But then as you talk about it, maybe you're like, yep, you do. Or like, well, maybe you actually don't. So we
Mm,
get to have this awareness as a team as well to say, gosh, where are our strengths? Where is it that we have ones that we need to grow?
mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it that you brought up the even the team aspect of it too, right? Like
Mhm.
where you might be assessing people readiness and you're going individually, right? And you're collecting all that information so that you ultimately can make a decision as the leader. But that's great for you to talk to people individually, but
Mhm.
also how do you have that team environment, right? Like how
Yeah.
do you create this community that everyone is really a part of the solution? And we know like when you are working in a community or you're in a community, if someone's stepping outside of the norm, right? Everyone's looking like, oh, why are you doing things differently than what we normally do? Is it because it's a better process or are you going rogue? Right? Like there's more people checking on the process for not even the people that are going rogue, but also, oh, that is a better way. Let's talk about how to do things a little bit differently. And I think that just goes down to willingness, right? Like your team, your individuals are part of this team and they're willing to be a part of the team and be a part of the community and push the community forward.
Spaces and trust and belonging within a team. part of that is including people in this stage.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I've been part of teams where all of a sudden a team member's like, oh, well, I need to go do this training or I'm going to this program. And you're like, how did you get picked?
Hmm.
That shouldn't be a surprise. Even if it's, gosh, as part of my personal development, this is what I'm working on. Great. Let's have transparency because that helps us understand and then also be able to support people in doing these things.
Hmm.
Because then collectively we're like, oh gosh, if you needed that, well, you know what? I should do this part to help fill in as well. Or, you know, maybe you'd like this part better and I should do this part over here. But
Yeah.
then together, now we have the team talking about what our future looks like and how we step into owning getting there.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's really important. That's really important because like you also, if you have limited resources, you also don't want two people working on the same exact thing,
Mhm.
right? It, maybe you do, but in a case where you don't, you definitely don't want them doing it, right? Like you
Right.
want them to be working on what you need them to work on. So having that transparency, being able to have those team conversations, being able to gauge and make sure that you realign, right, on your priorities, so important in a
Mhm.
piece of people readiness.
It is. So, Tia, I think that always leads to people going, like, what would we evaluate when it comes to food safety to know if people are ready? We touched
Hmm.
on it a little bit earlier, but I think that would be good to talk a little bit more about, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, when we think about food safety, the first thing is technical skills,
Mhm.
right? Like um we talk a lot about the human skills here at Catalyst, but a piece of that is that if you're in food safety and you're leading the organization or you're a team player or you have some responsibilities in food safety, you do need those technical skills. And so that's the first step to evaluate. Do you have the right skills on
Mm.
the team?
Yeah. I think that's important because when we talk about building trust in teams,
Hmm.
we don't necessarily need everybody to be all the experts.
Yeah.
But yet we still have this trust that we have this base understanding together about technical things.
Hmm.
And we may need to fill in, right, and help.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we're a team. But
Right.
yet if I have someone who's like, well, I have no clue and I don't want to learn, like what is our readiness? And that's part of the win.
Yeah.
Evaluating not only like where we have those gaps, but where we're at in the stages.
Yeah.
So, for example, what's a good example? Like I know food defense. Yes, I have been trained. I can write programs. But guess what? I would not be the person you should call to train somebody else on how to do food defense.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think when we talk about technical skills, there's also these levels within that are important for readiness.
Hmm.
Because if you were like, Jill's going to start training people on food defense, my readiness is still over here.
Yeah.
Not ready yet.
Right. Right. And it's important to know, right? It's important to know that because if you're putting all your eggs in the basket of Jill's going to be your trainer, right? Those technical, you either need to help Jill develop those technical skills to be able to get there, or recognize that's really not a passion,
Mhm,
right? And there's someone else. Tia's like, oh man, I really want to learn a lot more about food defense, right? And
mhm.
then that maybe that's someone that you can get ready to be that trainer for the team. But
Yeah.
understanding where your team is, right, and evaluating those technical skills is important, and thinking about too, like, from what's your vision, what's your strategy into the future, because if you are getting everyone trained up in food defense but you're missing the fact that you're going to add on a new product that contains sesame in a couple of years and no one has done any allergen training,
Mm,
then you're in the situation where that technical skill is low. And so the
mhm,
people readiness is going to be low for your new product in sesame. So understanding where you are, evaluating that, and then as a leader, understanding where you want to go or where you need to go in the organization, you have to do both.
mhm. Yes. And I think it also, another area is leadership skills, right?
Hmm.
Like we know we can have all the technical skills in the world, but if we can't effectively lead, our technical knowledge really just comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah, it's a waste, right? Like if
It
you
is,
have
it's a
all the
checkbox.
knowledge. Yeah, yeah. Like if you have all the knowledge in the world, but you can't communicate, that to others, or you can't influence others, or you can't build relationships with others, then it's as if you don't know that much at all, because no one else is going to know what you know.
Yes. And I love, Nikita, your comment here that mindset is a big part of food safety. And
Mm,
it's really important when you're a leader, even if you're not a leader. Everywhere mindset's important. But even as a leader, like knowing that I'm a leader and I need to have a leadership mindset.
yes.
I'm not just the technical expert anymore. I'm a leader. So that's why we even have like Catalyst technical leader mindset principles.
Yes, yes.
So I
And
have a mouthful.
right, right. You know, if you don't have a copy of that, we're happy to share it. Just send us a note. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, we have our leadership mindset principles, because that's important, and that is the first. That's one of the first steps, right? Like, if you are evaluating people readiness, do your people have that mindset, right? Like, even the comment with Nikita, where the mindset is around that food safety is a core business operation. Like, that's a mindset shift for many organizations.
Yes.
And so your people, if you are saying, you know what, that's going to be the vision for food safety here at Catalyst, say that Catalyst Food Manufacturing, right? If that's going to be the mindset, you have to make sure that your people are ready to start thinking about food safety in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. And I think as leaders, I mean, we all know, right? It's not title that makes you a
Mhm.
leader, even though a lot of times we go, well, I was already a manager or I was already a director. And so we kind of imply that there's perhaps these leadership skills that we've learned along the way. But
Yeah.
I certainly, I'm certainly going to caution people to think about what that actually means and how that's demonstrated,
Yeah.
because I think too often what we see in our food safety technical world is that we don't always have the right leadership skills to help us propel forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key, the right ones.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it takes time, right? It takes time to get these leadership skills and build these leadership skills. Is one of the reasons why we structure our leadership development, our technical leadership development curriculum the way that it is, because it gives you those skills and then helps hold you accountable and be able to give you time to practice these skills, because it takes time. And when you're thinking about, where do I need my team to go, or how do I need my team to shift their
Mhm.
mindset? Just know that's not an overnight thing, right? To start
No,
thinking about food safety as a core business operation, that's not an overnight. That's not an overnight change. You have
it
to
is
start
not.
laying that groundwork to get people ready,
Yeah.
right? It's the things that we talk about in boot camp.
It very much is. And I just put in our email. So Sarah, we shoot us a note, or anybody else. We'll be happy to share our leadership mindset principles with you. So
Yes, yes.
awesome. And I think the other part is that big willingness. Like no matter how many technical skills I have, no matter how much knowledge I have about leadership skills, if I'm not willing to work on these, if I'm not willing to step into them, if I'm not willing to own them,
Yeah.
like I
Hmm.
go nowhere.
Hmm. Absolutely. And, I would say that when you think about technical skills and those leadership skills, this willingness, I feel like it is like, it can be like a black box for people, right? Like, how do I get people in this mindset of willingness? How do I get them to want to do it and be that champion? Again, we talked about earlier. That's why coaching is such a huge part of what we do, because it's intrinsic and it really does help inspire people from the inside out, right? To step into the role that they need to play and want to play in.
Mhm. Well, I think even as we think about having people ready, I think a lot of times, like we'll see something in food safety and we're like, well, everybody else should be able to see this, right?
Hmm.
But just think how many times people aren't aware of the issue or understand the issue.
Yeah.
And so when we think about willingness, sometimes it's as easy as like helping people understand like what we're seeing and observing. It's
Hmm.
not that they're not willing, they don't know it exists.
Yes. Yes. And that, I think that's such a huge point, Jill, because the fact that we think they should already know, right? Like, and then we think that, and then we just run with that story. right? We run, and all the decisions that we're making from here on out just assumes that people know what food safety culture is supposed to be here, that people know what these things are. And we're looking back at people like, oh, well, why don't you know? Why don't you do these things? Right? When we really just need to take a step back and say, what if no one really knows what's in my head? What if no one really knows what I know because they don't have the same type of experience as I do?
Yeah. I think that's really an important aspect because sometimes when we sense resistance for
Mm-hmm.
someone to be willing or a team to be willing to come with us, or maybe they seem like they don't know enough and we translate that into the, well, they must not care.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
willingness really is part of, this is that tie in with the leadership skills of like, we really need to have some of those connections and relationships and awareness on the stories we're making up, because those are the things that sometimes get in the way. And we say, then it looks like they're not with us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes, yes. And I would say I have not run into a situation where someone says, "Well, the people on the floor don't care," and I
mhm.
go down and talk to them and get the sense that they don't actually care.
All right.
All of them care
They
about
always
it
care.
because they all eat the product, right? They all eat the product. They're serving it to their kids, to their grandparents, to their parents. They're eating it. Like they are extremely passionate about the food. I've never met a more passionate person about the food than the person that's actually making it.
Yeah.
And so those stories, and you all know I've worked in many facilities, and a piece of that is like the conversation, well, the people on the floor don't care, the people on the floor. And that, even in my consulting job, right, like as we're getting prepped for an audit, well, people don't really care about these things. As you talk to people, you find out that they care so much. They're just frustrated about the process, or they're frustrated that they're not being included, or they're frustrated that the organization is moving forward, but they haven't actually checked on their readiness.
Yes. And to kind of dovetail with that, even our own willingness needs to really be examined, and we need to have awareness around that.
Yes.
Because I'll be the first to say, right, I've had some things where I'm like, yep, we need to do that, and then I'm like, ugh, I really don't want to do that.
Right.
Or there's maybe a factor in there that causes me to pause, and it seems like it's a hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
whether it's real or perceived, it still puts me in this spot where I'm probably not as willing as maybe I need to be. And if I'm not, then I think that's something that's really important as a leader to know,
Yes.
because people around us will sense that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We
That's
may
that
think we hide
self-awareness.
it. We may think it won't matter, but you know what? It always comes through.
Yeah, it does. It's that self-awareness, right, that you brought up earlier, so let me know if you've been here before, where you're like, I need to do this, but I'm not ready to tackle that right now. Right? Like, I'm gonna, maybe in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna have that conversation with this person, but I don't want to talk to this person right now, or I don't want to go down this rabbit hole right now. Like, whatever it is, right? Like, use your phrase where you are aware enough to say, okay, I'm not ready to introduce this yet because I need to get ready for
Mhm.
the conversations. I need to get ready to be that courageous leader and to be able to have those difficult conversations and to go into influence mode, because those things take energy to
They
do,
do.
right? It takes energy to build relationships and to structure your workday and to communicate these things up, down, and across, and to others who you have stories that they don't really care about your work, but you need to communicate it, right? Like, that takes time and energy. And so you have to look at your willingness and your
Mhm.
readiness to start that journey.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, it's not this expectation like you always have to be like at a 10. I'm so willing.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes it's okay to go, gosh, I'm at a 5. Maybe I'm at a 3. That awareness just to know where you're at
Yes.
so that you understand what the next possibilities and options are. And I
Yes.
think that's important, because if I'm a leader and I have to have a difficult conversation and my willingness is at like a -5,
Right.
like, you know what? That's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I recognize I'm scared to have this conversation. What do I need to source to be able to step in and have the conversation?
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
about understanding where we're at and understanding what we need to help us move to the next spot.
Absolutely. There was this one question that I heard yesterday, where it's like, if you're trying to move forward and maybe you're scared, or maybe you're not, maybe it feels like you're not ready or you're not willing, to ask yourself, like, what's the tiniest thing you can do today to push
Mhm.
yourself forward? Like, it could be so tiny, right? So small. What is the smallest, tiniest little thing you can do today to
Mhm.
push you forward? And before
Yes.
you know it, you are at a 10 ready to tackle it all, right? Or you're at least at a 5 that you can have a conversation with your immediate team.
Mhm.
What is that one thing that you're going to do? Like, even as you think about this conversation, right? Like, what is that one thing you're going to do to evaluate your readiness of your team, or the readiness of yourself, or the readiness of your organization when it comes to food safety culture?
Yeah, and it works in all different aspects. I'm laughing to you because I told you we had all this snow, right? But when I went
Yeah.
outside, I was like, "Ugh, my bird feeders need food. I got to trek through, 2 feet of snow in the wind." I'm like, "Here's what I'm going to do. I see that," and literally, this is the conversation I had in my head. Yes, I have now observed and noticed that I'm not ready to go put that out. But what I can do is I can put out the pail of sunflower seeds. So the next time I go out, I can go at least put them in. So
Yes.
my first step was I'm just gonna put the seed by the door, and that way,
Right.
then the next time I go, then I'll be ready for it.
Yes. Yes. I love that. That's that preparation, right?
It is. It's the one thing to move me forward so that I'm more willing to get to the next step.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that
Yeah.
just literally just happened today. So,
I love that. We started this whole conversation with, like, at work and your personal life, right?
yes.
So these things relate all around, right? On, like, what you're doing at work versus what you're doing in your personal life. And actually, one great thing, and this is something that I learned with safety culture, right? Like, you should practice this all the time, because this is really how it becomes a part of you. And so right, like, that's when it becomes you. And that's ultimately what we want with culture, right? Is that all of your people, everyone in the organization, naturally thinks about food safety in every
Mhm.
decision that they make, right? The right decisions, right? And that they know who to contact. They don't need food safety to say, hey, you really should throw that away because it has mold on it, right? They don't need food safety to be there and see it and touch it and feel it and say, yep, throw it away. They'll be able to make that decision as if it's like putting on clothes in the morning, or brushing your teeth, or doing your hair. We want it to be so seamless. And in order for things to be seamless like that, we really should be practicing those type of principles all the time, in every part of our work life, as well as our own personal life.
Yes, very much so. I love
It
it.
will get you ready for the next step.
Yes. So I think as we consider readiness and getting people ready, there are a couple things that I think are important for us to make sure we touch on. Because last week we talked a lot about the hierarchy of needs.
Oh, yes.
And I think that was important because we talked about, right? If you remember Maslow's hierarchy, like people need to have the ground needs to be stable under us before
Mhm.
we're ready to move to the next layer and have change.
Yes. Yeah.
Same thing applies here for readiness. So if
Yeah.
we've just gone through a round of like slashing budgets or laying people off or a merger or something major in our organization, our people readiness is going to look very differently than if those things hadn't just occurred.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We should have brought it for today, even to show it again. But if you missed it, it was our last week episode.
Yes.
Um, so check it out. But it's really around, like, do my people feel safe, right?
Mhm.
Do they have those basic needs after having, like you said, go through a layoff or restructuring or a new manager, right? Like, all of those pieces, people just kind of fall down that hierarchy, and then you have to really work to build it back up. And as you think about food safety culture, right, like, it's even more complex, because you're really thinking about the full organization, and you
Mhm.
might be thinking about functions outside of food safety, right? So, like, how do you get your sales team to move out of this stage of, like, survival, basically, is like sort of how I think about the bottom part of the pyramid of like survival, safety, like that net. How do you get them out of that piece that they're starting to think about starting to think about food safety at this higher level, that we don't
Yeah.
have to be there all the time. Same with marketing or finance or operations, right?
Anyone. It's hard to stay on course and have the same willingness when you're like, I don't know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, yes, I know I can find one, but like we're still struggling with the whole, something like that,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something major that's happened, right? Like maybe who knows? There's a variety of things, but that's part of being mindful as a leader and being connected is going, gosh, if I'm taking care of my people and we just had something completely shift, either as an organization or even perhaps on a personal level for an individual,
Yes,
that
yes,
shifts what things look like for them.
exactly. And that might mean that you need to take a step back to get those people ready again,
Yes.
right? Like that means that, and we've been there, right? Like, oh man, I really want to get this across the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
But if your people are not ready, it doesn't matter if you're past the finish line. If your people are not with you, then it's not going to be successful. And you're going to have to start over anyway. You might even do damage because you decide to blow past everyone that's like, wait, I just need a minute to think.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely something to think about as you push forward in your food safety culture.
Yeah. And, really being aware of the influence that leaders have on team members. Right?
Yes.
Gallup reports every single year, and they wrote an entire book that 70% of the variation in sorry, my internet's a little unstable. So when we think about are people ready, a
Hmm.
lot of that also is related to how that leader is helping support them and how
Yes.
they're being connected to them and how they're creating safe places for the team to be.
And that's why we say it starts with you,
Yeah.
because you are that leader. Whether again you lead people directly or indirectly, you are that leader,
Mhm.
right? And if you are a manager, then you have even more impact on people, in their engagement, in their willingness, and what readiness.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so I think when we talk about people readiness, hopefully this gives you some sense of like why is it important to assess readiness? What areas do we assess readiness and perhaps how?
Hmm.
And then consider that will dramatically so gosh, sorry, I think the snow is interrupting my internet a little bit.
You know what? With weather comes opportunities, right?
It does. It does. But I imagine if you're listening, you're probably like, this is awesome. Of course I want to like continually develop in like my
Yes.
technical leadership. I'm going to drop over in our I have to jump in there, so bear with me. We have a wait list already for our next boot camp. And so if
Yes.
you're interested at all in what boot camp is like, get on the wait list because it's filling up. We want to make sure people who are willing
Hmm.
and ready can be part of it.
Absolutely. Because we talk about a lot of these things around self awareness and how do you get ready, right? Like a lot of people join boot camp and they're like, man, I need to be ready for this change. I need to get myself ready so I can get my team ready. Sometimes it's full teams that sign up because it's like we need to get ready for what's coming down the line and in the future and what we have to do with food safety culture. And so that's definitely a perfect opportunity for you to sign up, for boot camp.
Yes. So I dropped that in the comments. Hopefully it works because we don't do this very often. And of course, my internet's a little unstable.
Yeah, and if not, like our email's up. So if you need that wait list, please let us know because we'll send it directly to you as well. So we're excited that you all were able to join us today for People Readiness. We talked about how important it is, and we really do see it as the foundation for food safety culture, and the reason why, again, we have boot camp and we have our curriculum around leadership development. So we're excited that you're on this mission, right? And we're happy to be a part of it. And we do the show every single week on LinkedIn Live. We have all of our replays up on our YouTube channel. So please go over there and subscribe and turn on your notifications, because you will know when we put up a video if you can't join us live.
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Thanks for contributing to the community that we've created here.
Yes. And we will see you all soon. Have
Thanks,
a great week.
everyone.
Bye.